Hello everybody and welcome back to another not applicable Formula 1 video. I hope that you're well. I know that the 2023 season is almost upon us, and therefore with a new Formula 1 season we also have a new silly season to look forward to at some point over the course of 2023. We know it's going to come and we know that the drivers are going to change around for 2024. So here are my predictions. I'm going to make my way through the team, starting off with the team I think is most stable and most likely to keep their driver lineup exactly the same, all the way down to those drivers that I think are most in danger and the most dramatic driver changes that we could see in 2024. Starting off with Mercedes, who I think are absolutely guaranteed to keep George Russell and Lewis Hamilton together for the 2024 season. I think we can now say that Mercedes probably have the strongest driver lineup on the Formula 1 grid. Lewis Hamilton, a 7-time world champion, over 100 Grand Prix victories in Formula 1, and he looks really hungry coming into this 2023 season. I know that 2022 was very disappointing for him, but he has said that he is really excited to see what Mercedes can do over the course of this year, and also he said he doesn't see himself going anywhere in the future. Alongside him, we then have George Russell, who had a few question marks coming into the 2022 season as to whether he'd be able to step up from Williams to Mercedes and make that transition into a point-scoring team and consistently fighting for podiums. And he did that quite often, to be fair. He was in the top 5 so consistently over the course of the 2022 season. I think we can now say that George Russell, Lewis Hamilton is an incredible driver pairing for Mercedes moving forward. Next up is Ferrari, who I also don't think is going to make any changes going into the 2024 season. Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz is an incredibly talented lineup for Ferrari moving forwards. Charles Leclerc might be a little bit frustrated after the course of the 2022 season and how that played out, but there's nowhere for him to really go that is going to offer him that ability to win races, get pole positions, and possibly build up a title challenge that he is so desperate to have. Then there's his teammate Carlos Sainz, who had an up and down 2022, but again is under no real pressure. I don't think there's anybody on the grid that Ferrari could replace Carlos Sainz with that they could feasibly get right now that would be an upgrade on Carlos Sainz. On top of that, team principal Frederic Vasseur has talked about how much he absolutely loves this driver combination. He worked incredibly closely with Charles Leclerc during his rookie season at Alfa Romeo, and he's talked about how he tried to sign Carlos Sainz twice over the course of his career so far. This driver pairing is going nowhere. I think the third most stable team on the Formula 1 grid right now is Haas Formula 1. Kevin Magnussen coming back into the team for 2022. Nico Hülkenberg replacing Mick Schumacher for this 2023 season. Haas have had a lot of driver changes over the last few seasons, and I think they're finally happy with the two drivers that they've got. They've got two incredibly solid, incredibly experienced Formula 1 drivers, and I can't see them making any changes anytime soon. Kevin Magnussen is basically Mr. Haas at this point. Statistically, their best Formula 1 driver ever. Came in 2022, saved the day, delivered him a pole position. He has been absolutely phenomenal for that Haas team. And then Nico Hülkenberg coming in. I've said before, I don't think this is a very inspired signing moving forward for the Haas Formula 1 team, but I completely understand why they have done it. He is going to come in, he's going to be so incredibly consistent, he's going to cause no damage to that Formula 1 car whatsoever, and he's going to finish all the Grand Prix, which can't be said for a few of the other drivers they've had over the last few seasons. Next up, I've put Williams, who in 2023 have Alex Albon and Logan Sargent. And heading into 2024, I think we'll have Alex Albon and Logan Sargent. I can't really see Williams making too many changes. Alex Albon in particular right now is the best driver that Williams could ask for. He really does drag performances out of that Williams car. And I think moving forward is going to be the driver that they build around. And then, of course, you've got Logan Sargent coming into his rookie year. A US driver as well is really helpful for Williams moving forward to try and get those sponsorships. But on top of that, I do think he is going to be incredibly good and deliver. I think, it's going to be his rookie season. He's going to have ups and downs. There's maybe going to be points where we question him, but I think he'll do enough to hold on to his Formula 1 seat for the 2024 season at Williams. Obviously, James Vowles coming in as the new team principal might completely tear up the script at Williams and change everything around, although I think it would be a bit silly to get rid of either of these drivers. We're starting to move into the territory of teams that I could see making a change come the 2024 season, starting with Alpine here, who have got Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon. I think they are going to stick with these two drivers moving into 2024, but I could also see them making a change if they needed to. Esteban Ocon has obviously been around the Alpine and Renault setup for a very long time now and has shown that he is a very stable driver. Is he the kind of driver that is going to win you a Formula 1 World Championship in the future? No, but he does a very good job at just sticking in there and picking you up points when you need them. His new teammate Pierre Gasly does have some questions hanging over him though. Didn't have a great season in 2022 with AlphaTauri. Obviously made the switch over to Alpine now and needs to show that he can deliver those consistent points as well alongside Esteban Ocon. Otherwise Alpine might start to reconsider, considering Pierre Gasly was their third or fourth choice driver after they kind of had the Alonso Piastri calamity happen to them. I think the only reason that Alpine could consider changing either of these two drivers is how dramatic it gets between those two drivers over the course of the 2023 season. We know that apparently they like each other now. Apparently they've put all their past in the past, but you never know when it comes to Formula One. And there is a little bit of history between these two. I could see some fireworks flying. I could see some tempers flaring. And if Alpine just cannot be bothered to deal with Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon fighting each other on and off track, they maybe might just change one of them around. Aston Martin are a team that going into 2024, I think probably should make a driver change, but won't make a driver change. They've got Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll, and I think that will be the same moving into the 2024 season. First off, Fernando Alonso, I think, is a great pickup for Aston Martin. He's got a 2-year contract, and I think he will be really, really good for the Aston Martin team throughout those 2 years, unless something behind the scenes explodes. It is Fernando Alonso. There's a possibility that he just gives up halfway through the season and completely decides to change team. That happens sometimes. We've seen it at Alpine. It could happen to Aston Martin as well, but I think he will stay there for the foreseeable. I think Lance Stroll was the problem for me. Lance Stroll coming into the 2023 season. This is his 7th season in Formula One. 7 seasons. I know he's still incredibly young, but have we actually seen Lance Stroll yet really deliver to the expectations that are kind of around him? I don't think so. And I don't think we're going to see him improve that much over the next few seasons. I think if you're looking at like George Russell, Charles Leclerc, Lando Norris, these are drivers that I would build a franchise around. I would have them in my team and I would be like, you are going to be the driver that is going to win us races, get us podiums, and possibly fight for a world championship. Do Aston Martin see that in Lance Stroll? I don't think so. I don't see that in Lance Stroll. If Aston Martin do break into the top 3, it's not going to be Lance Stroll that is picking up the podiums and picking up the victories, is it? It's just going to be somebody else. And therefore, I think Lance Stroll's kind of time in Formula One should be dwindling out. And if there is a possibility to bring in someone better, Aston Martin should look to do that. But they won't, because it's Lance Stroll and Lawrence Stroll owns the team. Alfa Romeo, the first team that I can see making a change for the 2024 season. I think they'll keep hold of Valtteri Bottas, but Zhou Guanyu will get changed over for Théo Pourchaire. Valtteri Bottas, first and foremost, I think will stick with the team for another couple of years. I think obviously, even though they're transitioning into Sauber, they'll keep hold of him for those 2 seasons. Whether or not Audi will want to keep hold of Valtteri Bottas, we'll have to wait and see. But I think Zhou Guanyu is in a bit of an awkward situation. Don't get me wrong, he had an incredibly good rookie year in 2022. I think he did really, really well. And also, I think he's probably going to have a pretty good 2023. But as we transition into Sauber and then Audi, more and more sponsors are going to come online and want to be part of this Audi team that is coming in the future. And therefore, the monetary gain that comes with Zhou Guanyu isn't going to be such a big factor moving forward. On top of that, I think they just really want to get Théo Pourchaire in. He's been in and around this Sauber Alfa Romeo setup for a really long time. He's their reserve driver and test driver this year. He's going to be in Formula 2 again. I think he got really unlucky towards the end of the 2022 Formula 2 season. There are a few results where he should have picked up more points but didn't. It wasn't really his fault. You might also remember him battling with Oscar Piastri in the Formula 3 campaign that Oscar Piastri went on to win. He's an incredibly hot prospect and has been linked to lots of Formula 1 seats in the past, and lots of people talked about him coming into Formula 1 over the last few seasons. I think this is one and only opportunity, and I think that Sauber will roll the dice on Théo Pourchaire for 2024. AlphaTauri is an interesting one. Obviously, Yuki Tsunoda having to step up to the plate and Nick de Vries coming in for the 2023 season. And I think Nick de Vries might be replaced for the 2024 season. For 2024, I've gone for AlphaTauri having Yuki Tsunoda and Iwasa. Now, I think this is actually really, really close. I've ummed and ahed over this quite a few times as to whether Yuki Tsunoda or Nick de Vries will be the one driver that they keep hold of. I think there's definitely going to be a driver change at AlphaTauri, but I think it could go either way. I think Yuki Tsunoda's just going to edge it out in terms of the championship because of that experience that he has in Formula 1 over Nick de Vries, and therefore I think he's going to be able to keep hold of his seat. I think Nick de Vries, even though he's coming in Formula 2 champion, Formula E champion, obviously picked up points on his debut with Williams, but I think that Italian Grand Prix was a little bit of an outlier. First and foremost, that Williams car suited the Monza track down to the ground, and I think if Alex Albon would have been in that car that weekend, he would have also picked up points, which seems a bit weird, right? Because Nick de Vries came in for one race, picked up a couple of points, and then suddenly was like the hottest prospect on the Formula 1 grid. Although Alex Albon had been doing it in that Williams car over the course of the entire first half of the season, but wasn't linked with like Alpine and AlphaTauri all of a sudden. And then on top of that, it was probably the easiest track on the Formula 1 calendar as well. Like, I'm not taking away from Nick de Vries, Formula 2, Formula E champion, as I said, but it was a very easy track, and he didn't really have to do too much to pick up those points in the Williams car. I think over the course of a 23 race campaign, we'll see Nick de Vries challenged a little bit more. He'll find it a little bit tougher. He'll have those ups and downs. And I think, as I said, Yuki Tsunoda might just edge him out. And I think it probably won't be his fault, but I think Red Bull have a really, really hot prospect with Iwasa coming through. And the reason I think that is because obviously it was his rookie year in Formula 2 last year. It took him a little while to adapt, but if you look at the second half of the season, those final 7 races in Formula 2, Iwasa picked up the second most points of any driver behind Drugovich. Drugovich picked up 117 points in the last 7 races, went on to win the Formula 2 championship, so can't be in Formula 2 anymore. Iwasa picked up 102 points in those 7 races. Now, obviously, a lot can happen over the course of a Formula 2 season, but if Iwasa can do that again, but this time start with that kind of form moving forward, that means he might go on to be the Formula 2 champion in 2023, and then Red Bull would be absolutely silly not to bring him up into Formula 1, and I think Nick de Vries would be the driver that he'd replace. Talking to Red Bull, I think they're also going to make a change for the 2024 season. I think it's out with Sergio Perez and in with Lando Norris to partner their world champion Max Verstappen. Now, Max is obviously going nowhere. Max is Mr. Red Bull, double world champion. I think he's basically guaranteed himself a Red Bull seat until he retires. Although Sergio Perez is getting better. 2021 to 2022 is definitely a marked improvement for Sergio Perez. He obviously picked up victories, got that pole position, did really, really well in 2022, and I think will improve even more so in 2023. He did help them to get a Constructors' Championship for the first time in 8 years. That can't be frowned upon, but I think Lando Norris will knock on the door of Red Bull at some point this season. And I don't think it'll actually be Sergio Perez's fault as to why he gets kicked out of the team. I think it will be more so that Lando Norris comes in, kind of talks to Christian Horner and talks his way into that second seat at Red Bull. And I think he does that because I think McLaren really do start to crumble over the course of this 2023 campaign. It has been backwards steps over the last few seasons for McLaren. You know, a few years ago, they came 3rd in the Constructors' Championship, then 4th, then 5th. I really could see them finishing 6th in this 2022 campaign. If you're Lando Norris, one of the best drivers that there is on the Formula 1 grid right now, you're looking at Charles Leclerc, George Russell, Max Verstappen, winning Grand Prix, and you're probably thinking to yourself, I'm as good as, if not better than some of these drivers. I really do think I can be on this level. I've shown over the last few seasons that I can be right at the top of the Formula 1 grid. He's going to want to get himself a seat in those top 3 teams. Now, he could wait for Lewis Hamilton to retire at Mercedes. He could wait for Audi to come in and possibly build a team around him there, but that's another few years away. I think he gets a little bit impatient at this point. I think he just decides to call it quits with McLaren, decides to jump ship, goes to Red Bull, goes into that second seat. Yes, maybe he plays second fiddle to Max Verstappen, but he does get those victories and maybe gets to knock on the door of a world championship at some point. Which leaves McLaren having to find a replacement driver. I think they keep hold of Oscar Piastri and replace Lando Norris with Alex Palou. Now, Oscar Piastri, obviously a rookie in the 2023 season. As of yet, we don't know how he's going to get on in this McLaren car, but we're all assuming he's going to do quite well. He won back-to-back-to-back championships in Formula 4, Formula 3, and Formula 2. Went on to be the Alpine reserve driver. Toto Wolff and Christian Horner have talked incredibly highly of him. Alpine obviously wanted to keep hold of him. They were trying to get him a seat at Williams, but McLaren came in and swooped him up. And I think they'll hold on to him for the foreseeable future. I think they can see a real hot prospect in Oscar Piastri moving forwards. Then it's how do you replace the talismanic figure of Lando Norris in that McLaren car? And I think actually there's quite a few options for McLaren moving forward. They've got Felipe Drugovich, Mick Schumacher, and Alex Palou all as reserve drivers this season, plus a few more. But I think those 3 are all really good options for McLaren moving into 2024. I think of those 3, I'm going to pick out Alex Palou because I think that McLaren are trying to make this IndyCar Formula 1 car thing finally happen. Obviously, they gave tests to Colton Herta last year as well. But I think they go for Alex Palou because they gave the Spaniard an actual Grand Prix free practice session in Austin last year, and he held his own. Don't get me wrong, he didn't set the timing sheets on fire, but we were all pretty impressed with Alex Palou's performances. And I think, again, if he can get behind the Formula 1 seat another couple of times this season, maybe gets a few more tests in with the McLaren team, I could see them trying to make that connection with the former IndyCar world champion. That means I've got 3 new drivers moving onto the grid for 2024 in Porsche, Iwasa, and Palou, with Lando Norris making a big move to Red Bull as well. But I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments down below. Who is going to make the biggest move in 2024? Whilst you're down there, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and I'll see you next time.